Okay then, right, so first of all, thank you very much for joining us. And Patricia, first of all, we understand obviously you've been Health Secretary. Now, for someone who really doesn't know a lot about the Cabinet and how it operates, what was your experience as a Secretary and what was it all about? What were the sort of things that you did as Secretary of State for Health?
Right, well, as a Cabinet Minister, whether it's for health or anything else, obviously you're a member of the Cabinet. So at its simplest, there we are once a week meeting with the Prime Minister and discussing, the big issues really that the government is wrestling with. While I was in the Cabinet, we were regularly having discussions around public service reform, Iraq, of course, as you would expect, but then specific issues would come up in which all of us might want to contribute, for instance, about binge drinking, antisocial behaviour, that sort of issue. But then, as well as being a member of the Cabinet generally, you've got your particular responsibility. And as you say, I was Secretary of State for Health for 2 years. So what I was responsible for really was our overall strategy on health, including, of course, making England smoke-free, which we did, highly controversial, but immensely successful in terms of improving people's health. But I was also responsible for making sure that the NHS was working as well as it possibly could and, giving patients the best possible care in return for the billions of pounds that were going in.
And in terms of our audience out there thinking, well, she was the Health Secretary and everything, but nothing I could really do ever affected the way she made her policies. I don't know, waiting lists going on forever still arguably, some people may be thinking. And how basically are you held to account? What's the deal there? How are Cabinet Ministers held to account?
I think it starts for any government with the manifesto. Now, we had a promise going right back 10 years that we would deal with this problem of waiting lists and waiting times. Because when we were first elected back in 1997, that was the public's number one concern when it came to the health service. Now, at the point where I came in, actually the waiting lists for almost every procedure had already been dropping very fast. But we had a new commitment that we put into the manifesto in 2005, which said by the end of 2008, this very year, nobody would have to wait more than 18 weeks maximum from actually going to see the GP right through to having the hip replacement or whatever it was that you actually needed as a patient. Now that's a huge change for the NHS, because for most patients, for most operations, it means abolishing the waiting lists that have always been there. So that was a very high priority for me, because I knew that if not me personally as Secretary of State for Health, we as a government were going to be held to account for delivering on that promise, in particular at the next election.
So at general elections, basically, that's the only sort of main form in which you feel that you're held to account at the moment. For all those people, I understand you stepped down as Health Secretary once Gordon Brown came in. Is that true? And if you could, would you like to do your role again?
Well, I decided to step down, not because Gordon Brown was coming in, but because I'd been in government for the best part of 10 years. And my husband and I sat down, talked to the children about it, and it's wonderful being in government, and you can achieve a great deal for your own constituents, for the public generally. But it's not something in my, you don't want to go on doing it forever. It's very, very tough. The hours are absolutely relentless. The pressure is relentless. And I just come to a point where I wanted a different balance in my own life, not least because I've got 2 children who are young 20s, and I wanted a chance to see a little bit more of them. I've also got 2 parents in their 90s, and since my family's in Australia, that's even more difficult than it would generally be. So work-life balance, which I've campaigned for, and when I was Cabinet Minister for Women, did quite a lot to change the law on, I decided it was time to do something about that for myself personally.
I can understand that. And take us through, a Monday, when people wake up on a Monday, what sort of hours do you do? Take us through a typical Monday when you were Secretary of State for Health. What happened? When did you get up? What sort of things did you have to do?
Well, I was getting up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning to do the paperwork.
Right.
As a minister, you get this thing called a red box. And the red boxes weigh a ton even when they haven't got paper in them. They're supposedly lined with lead or something so that people can't spy on them. But you get several of those over the weekend and then another 1 or 2 every night. So a large amount of your time is just taken up going through enormous amounts of paperwork, getting on top of issues, reading submissions from the department, looking at stuff coming in from other departments and so on. So that was my normal routine, up very early in the morning and do the heavy duty paperwork. Then generally on a Monday, either off to the department, and then I had a routine of kind of Monday morning meetings, sit down with my special advisors, people who worked directly for me, sit down with the chief executive of the health service and the permanent secretary of the Department of Health, look at not just what was coming up in that week, but big issues looking several months ahead. Were we actually on track? A lot of the time when I was health secretary, we were focusing on the NHS finances because despite the billions we'd given the NHS, they'd actually overspent, and we had to get that back into balance, which was very difficult, very unpopular, but actually got the health service focused on how they gave every patient the best and didn't waste money, treating people unnecessarily or keeping them in hospital longer than they should have been kept in, that sort of thing. So generally, Monday would be meetings. Although the best Mondays were when we said, right, we won't have meetings, we'll shift them to later in the week, and just get out into some part of the country and go and visit. Maybe visit a hospital, visit a local health centre, talk to GPs, talk to staff, talk to patients, and have a look at what is actually happening on the ground.
When you're visiting these places, in terms of getting in contact with the electorate, with young people themselves who may want to vote and see the issues for themselves and what you're doing, the work that you're doing, what advice would you give them in terms of our question for this month, which is basically going to be, why bother voting?
I'd say what I say to young people in my own constituency. Look, you want to have a say in the world around you. You're generally, almost all the young people I meet, they're interested in something. It may just be the lack of youth facilities in their own area. It may be a kind of global issue like the environment and climate change. Whatever it is, if you want to have a say, you need to vote. But you need to do more than that as well. So go and meet your Member of Parliament. Get involved in the local youth parliament. Find out who your local councillors are. And indeed, more and more young people are standing as local councillors themselves, which is a great way of making sure young people have a voice and you get decent youth facilities in your particular community. But whatever the issue is that you feel really frustrated about or angry about or just fed up about, actually voting but finding out about what voting means is a pretty good way to have a say.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Real pleasure to meet you.